I'm Nivedita Kumar. I'll be your host today for another episode of Finding Wisdom. We are going to learn today about Brahman. Pandit Ramratan is here to talk about the Brahman. Welcome, Mr. Ramratan.
Thank you very much.
Could you pronounce the word Brahman?
Well, it's spelled Brahman. Brahman.
Brahman. Okay.
Brahman. This is the God that no one knows. No one knows or no one can perceive with the five senses, as we talked about in previous programs. This is the Spirit God. Na kartitva na bhoktitva. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't enjoy anything. He just is there. He created this world and he gets into it and he sits outside of it too. He doesn't take sides. He doesn't make any judgment. He lets his creatures do everything for themselves. But before we start, let's offer a prayer. Hari Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Ishwaraha Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Adiranadir Govinda Sarvakarana Kanana Sri Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Now back to Brahman. Brahman is best described in chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita. Nainam chindanti sastrani, nainam dahati pavaka. And the verse goes on. It talks about this God that cannot be touched by anyone or anything. Winds can't dry it, water can't wet it, fire can't burn it, weapons can't cut it. This is the God that every religion worships. This is the God that you and I worship, and this is the God that has created everything. It's called Brahman, Brahman. And we're going to talk about a little bit about Brahman. Who is this Brahman? Well, for a start, since this God has never been perceived only by the five senses, only realized by an enlightened soul, this God is best described as not this, not this, not this, not this, not this. That is, nothing in this world equates to God. And let me just say that, how can we describe something that we have got no experience about? It's very, very difficult. Yet we spend volumes and volumes of books to describe this Brahman. But nobody can equate it with anything that we have on earth or in this universe. And as such, Brahman cannot be described. Words are too weak to describe Brahman. One cannot use words to describe this God. He is indescribable.
So, who is Brahmana?
A Brahmana is someone who knows Brahman, someone who has realized Brahman. A Brahmana is an educated individual. Now, I want to take you a little bit to the caste system again, just briefly. Now, our Shastras talk about the caste system, but it's misinterpreted. Like most religions in this world, we see what we want to see in the verses, and we use it for our own ends and purposes, as you say. Brahmana. A Brahmana is someone who has knowledge about our Shastras, our scriptures, or you can call anybody a Brahmana who knows about the particular scripture that
the part of Varna system where priests were used to study about.
If you go to the Varna system, I'm just giving the real definition of a Brahmana. One who knows Brahman, one who knows God, one who's educated, one who spends his entire life seeking God out, and of course has knowledge about this God. But a Brahmana, as we know in the caste system, you're born a Brahmana, Vaisya, Sudra, Kshatriya, Vaisya, Sudra, those four castes. A Brahmana in those systems, you may be born in the household of a Brahmana, but that does not make you a Brahmin. Pandits wouldn't agree with me, my colleagues wouldn't agree with me this, because we're led to believe, and I was led to believe the same thing when I grew up. My father was called a Brahmana, and as such I was a Brahmin. But it doesn't work like that. I want to give you the classic example.
It's a huge concept, actually.
Yeah, it's a concept people use for their own benefits, like I said earlier on. You have a concept, you put the meanings in it so that you can survive, you can excel in your walk of life.
Yes, very true.
A Brahmana is not born A Brahman is
It's
not,
made,
Brahman is not,
yes.
it's not born. You're made.
Made.
Hanuman, the most powerful yogi that we have in our dharma. He says in the Valmiki Ramayana, my powers that I got, I wasn't born with it. It's not nature, it's nurture. He said I had to work for it.
So
The same-
anyone can become a Brahman.
Anyone can become a Brahman. Anyone can, even a Sudra can become a
Can
Brahman.
become a
In our
Brahman.
scriptures, there are a couple of characters who lifted themselves up to Brahmana.
Brahmanas.
Vishwamitra.
Vishwamitra,
He was a
yes,
Kshatriya.
yes.
And he lifted himself up to Brahmana because
Brahmana.
of his tapas.
Tapas.
And there are other people, there are other saints and sages that we have who have lifted themselves up from one. The Greeks had this system too. The rulers, the guardians, and the workers, and you could move
Yes.
move in between the divisions of society. In the same thing, we had a little bit of movement, not much, but there was movement. So back to a Brahmana being born. It's not being born. It's not nature. It's nurture. You have to be educated to become a Brahmana. Let me give you the example of a doctor. If you're born in a doctor's household, you don't automatically become a doctor. You got to be trained. Not because your father is a doctor, you get the title as a doctor. No. You have to be trained. And the same thing with a Brahmana. You have to be educated. You're born in a Kshatriya house, you can't become a warrior without training.
Learning, yes,
And the same
skills
thing
of-
with the vice. You can't become a farmer if you never took time to learn about farming. And laboring too. These are skills in the society which was divided by man for the benefit of man or society. Labor was divided for, the division of labor was there for the culture and the society to prosper. So no one is born into these castes. Unfortunately, when you label somebody, and it's in our scriptures too, when somebody's labeled according to the occupation that is stuck from generation to generation. We saw that in the Mahabharata with one of the brothers, Karna. He was a charioteer.
Yes,
son of a
and
charioteer.
he
Yes.
suffered so much
Right.
because of his.
So he wasn't
training.
really a charioteer. So
So
it's made by man for the benefit of society, and people should move. Let me give you an example. One of the reasons why people there are those who oppose the caste system, the Varna system. Those who oppose it change their religion and become equal and higher than the Brahmanas. You change it, you go to another religion, everybody becomes equal.
Equal,
You excel,
yes,
you get more position,
I think
you get
that's
status.
that's why
You
many
know?
people left our Hinduism.
Right,
and-
because they're being suppressed. You take the pyramid system in society structure. If the top people keep the bottom one there, they will
For
be
their
able to stay
own,
there.
yeah.
But the bottom people moved out, they're going to fall.
Fall.
And this is what's happening. The masses are moving away from the base of the pyramid. And changing their religion. So who are the Brahmanas going to preach to if everybody moves? So you're not born a Brahman, a Vaisya, a Sudra, or a Kshatriya. I said wrong. Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaisya, Sudra. In that order. You're not born in those caste systems.
And I think most of them didn't get access to these scriptures from these so-called Brahmins.
Again, it's a social
it became
system.
a social.
They were restricted. They weren't allowed to. Women weren't allowed to wear janeo. But if you look at the Devis that we have and the Murtis, the women wear the janeo.
Yes.
Female goddesses wear the janeo as well. Yagyopavitam, only the first three were allowed to wear it. The Brahmana, the Kshatriya, and the Vaisya were allowed to. The Shudras were left out. But Krishna says everybody has a right to come to me. Jesus said the same thing. All races, all mankind have got the right to come to me, to worship me, and to get the benefits of it.
So when did this happen? Like, I think during the Varna system happened, it wasn't meant for the caste system
Well,
to
there's
discriminate.
a hymn called the Purusha Suktam in the Vedas, which talks about it. The Vishnu Bhagavan as the Purusha. It is stated that the Brahmanas come from the head of Vishnu Bhagavan.
And the Shudras from the
Vaisyas come from the Kshatriya comes from the chest. The Vaisyas come from the arms and legs, and the Sudras from the feet. But this is looking at the various
feet is
parts.
important.
Yeah.
Yes.
Each part of Vishnu Bhagavan's body is important. He can't walk without his feet. He can't think without his head. He can't move without his arm. So each part of that society that was labeled Brahmana, Vaisyas, Kshatriya, Vaisyas, and Shudra, each one of those classes were very, very important, and one depended on the other. So they were indispensable. But people don't see that. And
I think they became wealthier. The pujaris and Brahmins became wealthier.
You think that you're cut above the rest.
Yeah,
then it's again
that
social
happened.
system. I'm higher than you. I'm a class above you. I want to maintain it. I want to have this glory, this ego trip that I have, and I want to maintain. I want to keep it.
And they won kingdoms. Kshatriyas won kingdoms, and the Shudras were left behind, I guess.
But the great ex-president of India, Radhakrishnan, he was professor in Oxford University.
Yes.
He talked about this caste system. And he quoted the Mahabharata. He said, Yudhishthira, the Dharmaraja, Yudhishthira. He said, how can you prove to me that you're born a Brahman? Men have got the eyes
Yes.
for women everywhere. How can you tell me that, you're a pure Brahmana? You don't know where your father's been, Words to that effect.
Yes.
In a subtle manner. It's said in his translation of the Bhagavad Gita, and I have a copy of that. And that's a reference. How can you tell that your father is a pure Brahman? How can you tell that you're a pure Brahman?
So the Brahmins at that time, did they eat meat and?
Well, there's something very interesting about that. I always had this concept that, let me go back to Buddhism. Let me go to Buddhism for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I always felt that Buddhist monks were vegetarian. I went to Thailand and I visited a monastery in the king's quarters in Bangkok. And they were preparing chicken for the monks. And I said, how come the monks are eating chicken? And the explanation was that they had to eat the food of the land. Wherever they live, you have to eat the food of the land. And friends, I want to tell you that no life can survive without eating another life. Remember that, no life can survive without eating another life. This vegetarian thing, it makes you calmer, it makes you sattvic, it prepares you for a kind of life. But if you're a warrior and you have to do physical work, then you need to have the foods to help you to do that chore, that task. So there are people who eat meat. I mean, the great...
Did sages eat meat?
Yes.
So that's one thing, yes.
Ramakrishna, it says in his book that he had fish from the Ganges. His wife Sarada Devi cooked it and he ate it. It says in his books, in the writings. So yes, people had to eat the food that the land produced, else how they're going to survive. And Ramakrishna said that the food is only for this body, to keep this body alive. The food cannot contaminate the Atma, the soul. The Atma is untouchable, is pure, absolutely sinless. In Hindu Dharma, Atman or Vedic Dharma, Atma is absolutely pure. The food you eat is only for this body. And Ramakrishna said that whenever he goes to somebody's house, whatever they put in front of him, he ate. And he went to Muslims, Christians, and Hindus' homes to preach and to give his teachings. And he never looked at the food. He said his food is for the body. So this is a great teacher. It's a great concept. I'm not telling you to go and eat meat. If you don't eat meat, then you have a different disposition. Animals that eat meat, if you look at them, the tiger, the lion, the dog, the carnivores, they're very vicious creatures. Animals that don't eat meat, the cow, the sheep, the goat, they're, docile. So the food has something to do with your way of life. And that's something I want to leave you to ponder on. Don't take what I have to say to you absolutely. My idea is to lay out the knowledge to you like a buffet. When you go to a buffet, you take only what you want. What you don't want, just leave it right here. Don't worry about it. Worry kills. Take what you think is important, reflect on it, meditate on it, and use it if you can. But get wise.
So, like in India, certain Brahmins do eat meat and fish.
Yes.
And we had an argument the other day that this is all,
Again, it depends.
What? In
and
Mithila, they eat fish, and they even offer it to the gods.
Let me just give you an idea. If you live on the Himalayas, halfway up the Himalayas,
Yeah,
and you got no, you got no vegetation. What else lives in the snow?
Like you kill the yak, they eat.
Yes. So, we don't want to offend anybody, but get real. Get real.
What else is the concept of Brahman?
Brahman is that God that man has spent a lifetime contemplating on and still cannot describe this God. He is indescribable. But He is the all-pervading God. He is the God that created this universe. He's the God that is responsible, that makes He's the one that makes everything move, in this world. He's the one that makes everything stop moving too. He's there. He is what we call the real thing. There's an ad in England that says, Coke, the real thing.
Okay.
It has different meanings, drugs and Coke as a product. But God, it's Brahman, is the real thing. Why is real? Let me give an example, folks. Listen to this. Today I am here and Mrs. Kumar is here. My host is here. Nivedita Kumar is here. Right? We can see each other. This is consciousness. We're conscious of each other. Then we go into a position called sleep. You know, we sleep, right? It's a state of consciousness. When you're fully awake, when you sleep. And then there is deep sleep. When you sleep, you dream, right? There is an unreal world that your mind projects into the dream. As soon as you wake up, that unreal world disappears. When you get into deep sleep, you're nothing. You disappear. When you're in deep sleep, you don't know who you are, where you are, what you are. You got no money, you got no debts, you got no children, you have no house, you have no car. That's deep sleep. You're nothing. And you wake up, you're somebody else again, right? God, right? God, these are unreal situations, but God is the real thing. We die, listen carefully, we die and we're born again and again and again. And we come back and meet the same Brahman here. This God is here. He never dies. He's still here. We die. Remember I said earlier on, everything that is created must perish. Everything that is made will rust away. A car that's made will rust away eventually. A boat that's made will get to the sea eventually. If it takes millions of years. If you take the boat and put it on the bank, rain will get on the boat, it'll rot, it'll get into the soil, water will get into the soil, and eventually each molecule will get back into the river, it gets to the sea. A boat is destined for the sea, right? You can change, you can alter the time it gets to the sea. But it's going to get to the sea eventually. Millions of years or whatever, it's going to get there. So you cannot alter destiny. We're going to be born and we're going to die.
How do you relate this concept to science?
Science. All right. I'm going to try.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a tough interview. Now, science, science says that, if there was a God, why does he let people die young? There's no reason. And we talk about karma phala, we talk about the fruits of our actions. Now, the idea of being born again and again and again to get the fruits of your action is sustained by the idea that somebody dies young. There must be a reason for it. It's probably from past karmas. What he's done in the past life, he's paying for it in this life. And that's the only explanation we have. And this ties in, this verifies our rebirth, that people are born again and again, because we don't understand why this God, if he's such a good God, will let a child die at a very young age, or let somebody who's done so much good in this world die in the presence of the people that he's doing good, and he causes pain, pain and suffering. This has to do with the fruits of his action previously. Now, there are three types of actions. Listen carefully, I want to talk about these three types of karma action. One is called prarabdha karma, the action, or rather the fruits of your action that you're experiencing now, right now. The aches you have, the asthma you have, the pain you have, the mental agony, the physical agony that you have now is what you've worked for and you're experiencing now. That's your karma, the fruits of your action now. So you get the fruits now, right? Whatever you're experiencing now is the fruit, good or bad, right? Happiness or sorrow, joy or sorrow, whatever. The next type of karma is called kriyamana karma. Kriyamana means action. Whatever you're doing now will bear fruits later on. Maybe this life, maybe the next life, maybe 10 lives from now. Be born again 10 times. That's about 1,000 years, right? Assuming that you live 100 years, right? So kriyamana karma, what you're accumulating now, the fruits of your action now, you'll get it. You'll have to earn the fruits. You have to receive the fruits of those actions. And another one is called sanchita karma. Sanchita karma is stored karma, the karmas that you've stored from previous births, which are not
inherited it.
Yes, it's there, but it's not used up. So you're gonna get the fruits of that eventually. So those are the three types of karma: what you're getting now, what is stored, and what you're creating now for future. Three types of action, and you're gonna get the fruits of. Nothing goes unpaid. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, "I am not responsible for your actions. I'm not responsible for what you do. You gotta pay." I mean, we've heard this in our schools. The Christian.
Karmanyevadika.
Nothing goes unpaid. What you sow, so shall you reap. All these sayings that we have ties in with almost all the shastras that we have in the world, all the books we have in the world. What you sow, so shall you reap. And you're going to get it. If you do a bit of good, it's like, if you do a bit of good, you're going to get the fruits of those actions. You're going to enjoy it, right? But the karmas that are stored have to be worked out. The actions or the fruits of those karma have to be burnt up. They're called vasanas to a certain extent in certain scriptures. They have to be used up. You've got to be born again and again until those are burnt out, as it were, before you get back to God. That's our teaching in Vedanta and in Hinduism, right? You have to burn out all these or utilize all these fruits before you can get back to God. And to get to God, again, the Upanishads talk about getting to God. Listen to this. It says in the Upanishads, Shurashadhara, a verse in the Katha Upanishad, said this road to God is very, very difficult. It's like walking on the edge of a razor or a sword. Some people say sword. It's very, very difficult. You're going to get hurt, right? And it says also in the Upanishads that the weak is, very, very, it's very, very difficult for the weak to get to God. Meaning that if you want to realize God, you have to start at a young age, youth. When we send people to the armed forces, we send young people. Only they can fight. I can't fight. I'm too old to fight, right? You want strength. The same thing with getting to God. You need youth. You need strength. And psychologists have said way back in the 60s that youth ends at 30. So you have to start long before you're 30 to get to God. And you may not be able to get to God in the first 30 years of this life, so you have to go on. And all those karma, all those actions that you do to get to God in the first 30 years of a life will be transferred to the next life, and eventually you get to God. So there is an account. There's an account your effort to get to God. So it stays with you. All your actions are recorded somewhere. It's like information technology long before it was invented. It's there somewhere.
So can we discuss something about the Om? Is it
Om.
related to Brahman?
Yes, Om is God. Om is the natural sound.
That they say it's a Bijakshara, that is...
Yes, Bija means a seed. It's the original
seed,
mantra.
yeah,
Yes, original source of God. Om is the original sound that our Shastras again means scriptures, our Shastras talk about this sound, which was the first step in the creation of the universe.
Is it related to Brahman?
Sound. And if you look at scientific programs on television like Discovery and the like and National Geographic, you'll find that sound has got a lot of potential. If you look at the Memorex tape advertisement that they have on television, sound will shatter glass. So it's very, very powerful. This sound was vibrated. Nada, Brahmanada, or Nada Brahma, the sound of Brahman.
Yes.
Created the interaction of
they say
molecules.
It's a very powerful...
Yes, molecules and atoms in the universe, and Big Bang. And the rest is history, you know that. So Om is the original source of creation. It's the sound that has tremendous potential. Om is God. Om is Brahma. Om is Vishnu. Om is truth. Om is God. And it's one of the primal sounds that we use in our dharma. Everything we say with Om.
Om, yeah,
Om,
the beginning.
Om, yes.
It's the beginning of...
We start with Om. Hari Om, and we say Om 3 times. Om Sri Guru Bhyo Namaha Hari Om Hari Om. If you say it in a phrase, you say it 3 times. It covers the earth, the mid regions, and the heaven. You want peace. You say Shanti, Shanti 3 times, and we say Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti 3 times. Peace in the earth, peace in the mid regions, peace in the heavens.
Is it something to do with the vibration of the sound?
The vibration. Om. You see, when you chant Sanskrit mantras or Sanskrit words, you say it correctly, or even the alphabet.
Yes.
Each alphabet in Sanskrit is a mantra. Each one is a mantra. If you chant them correctly, you get the best results from God and from your body. It helps your body as well, and it's good for health too. But if you chant it correctly, you are able to get closer to God. You're able to get the best experiences for, in your meditation or in your worship or whatever you do. But you've got to be able to say it correctly. And not willy-nilly. You have to say it with fervence, you have to say it strongly, and you have to really put zest into it, with feeling.
So to conclude this, who is Brahman? The Brahman is the one who's learned.
All right, let me explain. There are several similar sounding names. Brahman, which is God. The Brahma, which is a God that has form. The Brahman has no form. Brahman has no form. The first one, God. Brahma has form, like as in Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh, the Trinity. The Brahmana or the Brahmin, right, is someone who's enlightened in our Shastras, who knows about rituals and about the scriptures. And the Brahmanas is a part of the scriptures that we study. It's called the Brahmanas. It's a part of the Vedas. It's a section of the Vedas. So you have a Brahman, you have Brahma, you have a Brahmin, and you have the Brahmanas. You have 4 terms which are similar sounding, but they're each different. But the one God that we worship is called Brahman, Brahman. And I want to leave
So
you with
you,
that.
me, and everyone can become a Brahman
Yes,
if you
yes,
pursue
that's
the.
been proven. That's been proven by the Shastras. You know, when Krishna talks about it, and Vishnu Bhagavan talks about it, when he's talked about it in the Purusha Suktam, it's clear that this is a division of society for the benefit of man.
And it's the
Not
purity of
fixed.
knowledge which is Brahmana. Brahma.
Again, you know, I don't see myself as a Brahman because I don't know enough knowledge
Yes.
to be called a Brahmana. And then you have to live a life. And you have to be able to, you know, renounce certain things that you do. I still live in a Western society. You know, I chase the good life. You know, I chase the comforts. I like my air conditioning. I like my car. You know, you know. So you know, these things, you know, they're a hazard.
They don't bother
No,
the
no.
Brahmana. Brahmana is someone who is above all
Today's
this.
Brahmins have cell phones and computers and you know and car and things like that. So yeah, even the Swamis when they come from India, they're spoiled. You know, remember Rajneesh? He was a
Yes,
scholar.
he
He was a
was
scholar
scholar.
par excellence. But I think America spoiled him. Now, who wants
Yes.
92 Rolls Royces? You know, but he was a scholar. I adored the man. I
Yes.
liked the man. He had a lot to teach. But you know, the lifestyles tends to spoil these Swamis when they come over from India, and you know, disaster ensue.
Yeah.
But you know, it's a
So it's a constant search to become a Brahmana, I feel, like all your life.
well, you see,
I think if you think about being a Brahman, then it becomes a constant search.
like anything else,
to-
if you focus on something, you become that thing. You know, there's a lot of great scholars in America who talk about you. A guy like New Yorker, Norman Vincent Peale talked about you know more than what you think you are. What you think you are, you are. If you think you're a Brahmana, then you'll focus on the goal of becoming a Brahmana. And if you think you're a doctor or a lawyer, then you know you're going to focus on becoming one of those. And if you can't make it, then you do something else. And if you make it and you can't use it, you do something else, like Margaret Thatcher. She was a chemist, she became prime minister. You know, not everybody.
So it begins with who am I? And
Yes, who you are. That is a concept which we can discuss at another program.
next program.
That's going to take a lot of time. Who am I?
Who am I?
The scholars of Vedanta
So
says
we
if
can-
you look,
yeah.
you only God is within you. You know the bhajan, Sivoham.
Okay.
I am
So,
God.
yeah.
You know, God is in me. God is in you. And you know this thing about Namaste, which is in the internet now.
Yeah,
circulating,
I think we can keep that for
The-
the next show.
the
So we are
God,
running out
yes.
of time.
Okay.
So it's a pleasure
Hariom.
talking to you, and we learned a lot about Brahman today. So thank
Our
you
final
very much.
mantra. Yatya Yogeshwaraha Krishno Yatra Paturdanurdaraha Tatra Sri Vijayai Bhutir Dhruvanitir Matir Mama. I think we're out.